Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teal Miller, and I am a senior psychology major here at Robert Morris University. And I want to share my thesis with you today. But first, I do want to take a moment to introduce my advisor, Professor Cole. She really helps me a lot with this project, and I'm very thankful, so thank you. But first, I want to show you guys some motivation for my research. Like I said, I am a psychology major here at RMU, and I've always been really interested in how psychology intertwines with other fields of study, and especially law. And I am going to law school next semester, and as I was looking at career options, I stumbled across litigation consulting. And it's a new and innovative field, and I thought it was really interesting, and I've always been interested in all the work it takes into preparing a case for trial, and I thought the research and litigation consulting would be a really good fit for my senior thesis. So as I began in researching litigation consulting, I learned that it grew out of trial consulting, and trial consulting grew out of a need for scientific jury selection. And scientific jury selection is basically using sociological and psychological principles to select a jury that will be most likely to be sympathetic to your appeal. So because today trials don't go to, well, I guess cases don't go to trial as often as they used to, so trial consulting needed to begin to diversify themselves, and they became litigation consultants because they took on new services. And most litigation consulting companies use jury selection, witness preparation, and litigation graphics. However, litigation companies are very, very diverse, so they have many different types of services, and this makes it really hard to study as a field because they have so much going on that you kind of have to break it up and research the different parts. So these are the components that I decided to research, and that way we can see litigation as a whole to research as well. So what I have found from my previous research of the litigation, or the literature, was that, actually I'll go back so you guys can see this. In jury selection, we found that the variance was 5% to 15% in verdict predictions, and that combined with a successful use of strong data can improve an attorney's performance by 61 to 69%. We also showed that witness preparation showed to be useful in increasing accurate responses and decreased errors from mock witnesses. Also, my research showed that most researchers agreed that presentation of the evidence is the most important part of the litigation presentation. So what my literature review showed was that the parts of litigation consulting was important to attorneys. It was showing that there was some type of benefit that they were getting from it. But what I didn't find was how lawyers use litigation consulting and what their perceptions of litigation consulting was. So I decided to do that. I would conduct a pilot study to see if a larger scale study was feasible, and I surveyed 4 local civil litigators, and that was a representative study. So we used two attorneys that had used litigation consulting before and 2 that had not. That way we had a overview of both litigators. And each participant completed a web-based survey. It was sent through email. We formed the questions in Question Pro. There was about 10 questions. They're mostly select all that apply. And there were 3 distinct parts, and those included attorney's usage or intended usage of litigation consulting, and the professional credentials of litigation consultants. So I decided to add that in because litigation consulting is not a licensed field. So as an attorney, I thought they might have some biases towards litigation consultants because they went through 3 years of law school and they have a professional degree, and they would be giving advice from someone who didn't. So I thought maybe there would be some biases in there, so I decided to add that. And then I also added the perceived value of litigation consulting services. So my results showed that attorneys use litigation consultants for trial strategy, mock trials, trial graphics, and jury selection. However, none said that they use litigation consulting for witness preparation, post-trial interviews, and opening and closing arguments. And then when asked what they would consider using litigation consulting for, none of them said they would use it for anything more than they've already been using it for. So no one chose to use it for witness preparation, post-trial interviews, or opening and closing arguments. And then for the professional credentials, unfortunately, none of the attorneys that I surveyed did use litigation consultants with a JD, so I could not search for any of those biases. And then for the value of the litigation consultant services, one attorney said litigation consultants improved their presentation of the case, and another said it helped him identify the key elements of the case. However, no attorney said litigation consulting saved time, improved their chances of winning, or increased their persuasion. But I think it's also very important to mention that no attorney said the litigation consultants were not valuable. So they all thought they were valuable. Those who did not use the survey, or did not use litigation consultants, said that they did not use them because of time constraints and cost-benefit analysis, because litigation consulting is expensive. So as a discussion, I sat down and looked at all the research, and I thought that because no one chose litigation consulting in opening, closing statements, witness preparation, or post-trial interviews, it could mean that litigation consultants are not needed in this area, or that attorneys feel that litigation consultants would not benefit in these areas enough for them to hire a litigation consultant. Unfortunately, there was no basis for comparison between attorneys that had, or litigation consultants that had a JD and those who did not, because none of our participants had used litigation consultants with a JD before. And though it was interesting that even though attorneys who self-selected that they used jury selection as a litigation consulting service, did not report that litigation consulting helps them choose a jury that was likely to be sympathetic to their case. So that was definitely an interesting finding, and I was thinking that it seems that the attorneys found litigation consultants useful in preparing the specifics of the case, but it did not have an influence on the attorney's ability to do their own jobs. And I think that in itself might show some sort of bias, but because this is a pilot study, no conclusion can actually be made from those findings. And a larger scale study is needed, and in this study we determined that it is feasible to have a larger study as well. And then further research would also need to establish what types of attorneys use litigation consulting, on what types of cases they prefer to use litigation consulting on, the biases surrounding professional credentials. I do believe that having a larger participant base would present some of those findings as well. And then I think it's also important to see if it was the individual's attorney or the individual attorney's decision to hire a litigation consultant, or the firm's decision to hire the consultant, or if it was policy that the litigator had to hire a consultant for a certain case, because I think that would definitely change perception as well. And then for my limitations, the sample size was definitely a huge limitation because I could not make any concrete conclusions, and then it was impossible to find any biases surrounding professional credentials. However, all in all, this study was not only beneficial to my personal usage and interest, but it has also showed that a larger study is feasible and needed to further research in litigation consulting. So thank you for coming today.